All right, guys. I decided to make a video about another weight division for once in my life because I only talk about the heavyweight division mostly. So I wanted to give you guys my opinion on the super middleweights because maybe you guys are interested in my opinion on Chris Eubanks Jr. versus James Degale. So here it is. Later this month, Chris Eubanks Jr. is facing James Degale at the O2 Arena over there in the UK. And this is actually a fight that I'm actually intrigued to watch just because at the stage of the careers that both of these guys are in. I mean, I've been watching and following both Chris Eubanks Jr. and James Degale for many years now. And, if this fight would have happened 3 to 4 years ago, I would be saying James Degale schools Chris Eubanks Jr. I would be saying this is easy work for James Degale. Because James Degale, I believe 4 years ago, when he was at his best, was just a superior fighter to Chris Eubanks Jr. But right now, I believe that James Degale is on the slide. I mean, I think after he had a tough career, James Degale. I think after that war he had with Bada Jack, I think that slowed him down. He had a tough fight with Lucien Bute, so I think those fights kind of slowed him down. Right, and it kind of showed when he fought Caleb Truex, right? That Truex guy, because he was supposed to beat Truex and he lost to him in the first fight, and that was kind of an embarrassment because James Degale was supposed to beat that guy. You are in a higher level to Truex, but he lost to that guy. Of course, he avenged his defeat and he lost and he beat him, and he regained his title. But I feel that James Degale is kind of like a spent force. I feel that, because he's been in many wars, he's starting to slow down, in my opinion. James Degale has always had this kind of herky-jerky style. He's like a in-and-out type of fighter, right? He uses his legs a lot, right? To move in and out. He's a fighter who depends on his legs, right? So, and in my opinion, the worst thing that James Degale could be against the ropes. And it showed when he fought Truex. When he was against the ropes, he was just getting his ass whooped. Now, when it comes to Chris Eubanks Jr., in my opinion, he has way more mileage in his tank than somebody like James Degale because, first of all, he's younger. Second of all, he hasn't been in wars like that, right? Now, when it comes to Chris Eubanks Jr., a lot of people had high hopes for him. I remember when he was unbeaten, when he was coming up, he has a lot of confidence. He has a big ego. He was talking like he was the next, Jesus coming. Right, he was the next big thing, basically, the next greatest thing since sliced bread. Right, he was gonna take over the division. His father, Chris Eubanks Jr. Senior, was saying his son, Chris Eubanks Jr., was better than Floyd Mayweather Jr. Of course, he fights Billy Joe Sanders, gets exposed against him. I guess you could say loses, but then he comes back, has a few fights, and then he fights George Groves and he loses. So when it comes to Chris Eubanks Jr., the first two guys that he stepped up against, right? He lost against them convincingly, right? He lost against both Billy Joe Sanders 4 years ago, and of course, last year or 2 years ago, he lost to George Groves. So the two guys he stepped up against, he lost, right? So that shows you where he's at when it comes to like his skill set, right? Again, when it comes to Chris Eubanks Jr., he's actually a good inside fighter, I think. I've always felt he was a good inside fighter. I like his body shots. I like his uppercuts on the inside, right? He throws a lot of uppercuts. Like I said, I would be picking James Degale 4 years ago if this fight took place 4 years ago, because I remember there was like talks of this fight happening 4 years ago when James Degale was at his peak. But we're looking at James Degale. He's fighting this version of James Degale. I think he's fighting a basically past his best James Degale. So, because he's fighting a past his best James Degale, I look at this fight as way more competitive. Because, like I said, I think the way to beat James Degale is to bully him. James Degale is a guy that if you get on the inside against him and push him against the ropes, you could and smother him and let your hands go against the ropes against him, you could really beat him up, right? Bada Jack beat James Degale up whenever he had him against the ropes. When he had him against the ropes and pinned against the ropes, he was beating him up. You look at James Degale's face, it completely smashed to bits, right? Because and all that punishment took place when he was against the ropes. He also took punishment against the ropes when he was against the ropes against Truex, Caleb Truex, right? So like I said, this shows me that James Degale is a guy that if you have him against the ropes, you beat him up. So Chris Eubanks Jr. is a inside fighter, right? So I think what he needs to do is he needs to cut the ring off. All right, he needs to cut the ring off against James Degale and push him back against the ropes and let your hands go, man. Throw the body shots, throw the uppercuts, give him a beating. I think if you see James Degale leaning up against the ropes, you're gonna and Chris Eubanks Jr. is right there up in his grill, you're gonna see James Degale receiving an ass whooping, in my opinion. Right? And I think what James Degale has to do is he has to go back to his traditional roots of using his footwork and outbox Mr. Chris Eubanks Jr. I think he could easily outbox Chris Eubanks Jr. because I've seen Chris Eubanks Jr. get outboxed. You could outbox a style like Chris Eubanks Jr. So for James Degale, I think he needs to play a back foot game against, do it in and out like he did when he was in his prime. Let your combinations go, but then get out of there. Don't wait to exchange with Chris Eubanks Jr. Get out of there. Do it in and outy. And then when it comes to Chris Eubanks Jr., I think he needs to seriously bully James Degale to beat him. But I think this is an interesting fight just because, like I said, where both of these guys are at the current stage of their careers, I mean, this is really like a last hope, a last fight for somebody like James Degale. Because if he loses to Chris Eubanks Jr., people are going to say he shot. All right? They're going to say, oh, man, he can't even beat Chris Eubanks Jr. And this is a big fight for Chris Eubanks Jr. because if he loses against James Degale, they're going to say, people are going to write him off again. They're going to say, man, this guy lost to another guy that he stepped up against. Because like I said previously, the two guys that he stepped up against in Sanders and Groves, he lost. So if he lost against James Degale, people are gonna say, "Oh man!" So the third time he stepped up, he lost. So they're gonna be calling him all types of names. Once again he loses. He's not as good as people claim he is, or as he claims he is. So he needs to beat James Degale in order to people at least to start giving him credit as a fighter, as a super middleweight. Because like I said, this guy was supposed to be the next big thing at middleweight when he was fighting at middleweight because, at least him and his father claimed that he was like the next big thing. Anyway, guys, stuff to say. Thanks for watching. And I don't know how good this video is going to do because I don't really talk about other weight divisions, but at least you guys know my opinion on Chris Eubanks Jr. versus James Degale. Bye-bye.